Welcome to the show. I'm Chris Graham, joined by Rod Mullins. We're talking on Tuesday this week because the Coca-Cola 600 delayed by rain for a whole day. Finally got the race underway on Monday, and they finished late last night because weather still was an issue during the day on Monday. And we'll talk about, how things wrapped up, the winner and, top five and all that fun stuff. But we got some breaking news here as we're talking on Tuesday, Rod. There was a dust-up between Denny Hamlin and Chase Elliott yesterday, and there's some breaking news involving Chase Elliott.
Well, let's just say this. If you're not familiar with what happened yesterday, Chase Elliott said that Denny Hamlin had just pinched him up against the wall. And then out of left field, his car turns and goes into Denny Hamlin, and thus taking both of them out. And Denny Hamlin was not too happy as he got knocked out of the race, and Chase Elliott did too. Chase Elliott said, I didn't intentionally do it. I didn't intentionally do anything like that. When these cars get up against the wall or somebody hits them, they're worthless after that. They just don't drive well. And that's exactly what happened. Well, folks, I'm going to tell you, I looked at it several times watching the replay. Either that car became possessed like Christine in the Stephen King movies, or he deliberately turned it into Denny Hamlin. There was just no doubt about it. He may have just took his hands off the wheel. Who knows what he did? I don't know at this point, but Denny Hamlin was just point blank and said he ought to be suspended. And he even called out his driver from 2311 Motorsports, Bubba Wallace, when this happened against Kyle Larson at Las Vegas, and there was a little dust up between those two. Bubba Wallace did get suspended. So Denny, being the judge, jury, and executioner now in NASCAR, pretty much pronounces judgment. And we find out this afternoon, right before we're going on with the podcast, that NASCAR has suspended Chase Elliott for this week's race at St. Louis.
Yeah, I'm reading the report here. Officials cited sections 43A and 44C and D of the NASCAR member code of conduct, basically ruling that, that Elliott intentionally crashed Hamlin on lap 186. And, I was watching the replay a few times on the NASCAR website. And everything you described there, Rod, it was definitely intentional. Picking up from what Denny Hamlin had to say after the race yesterday, after he got knocked out of the race. His car got mangled in that crash. And also Elliott did too, actually sustained significant damage. So he calls the crash, but it wasn't able to evade the damage. Afterwards, Hamlin said it's a tantrum. He shouldn't be racing next week. Right rear hooks are absolutely unacceptable. I don't care. And as you mentioned, he referenced the Bubba Wallace suspension last year. Is this something, these are two of the sport's top racers and certainly best known names and guys who are always in the championship mix. Is this something that we can see kind of fester as the season goes on between these guys?
Yeah, it could. But I this is the thing that I think Clint Boyer and them were talking yesterday on the broadcast about. You've already missed, gosh, how many races at the beginning of the season? Something like 6 or 7 races after he got in the snowboarding accident, broke his bone, broke his leg. And then here he is. And then the next thing that happens, he's knocked out of it. He's got to race his way into playoff contention, and he has to have some great finishes or some wins. You don't go and do things like that. You don't go make bonehead decisions just because you feel like somebody has pinched you up against the wall. It may be okay in some people's books, but it's not okay if you're trying to race to get in contention for points and try to get into the playoffs. I think that was the one thing that Clint Boyer really pulled out of the hat, and Tony Stewart did about the same thing. Let me just read you here the official Hendrick Motorsports statement. I just got it here just a few minutes ago. It said, "We understand NASCAR's need to maintain consistency in its officiating. The penalty will not be appealed, and we will submit a formal request for a playoff waiver." That's what they're calling here. Corey LaJoie is going to drive the number 9 Chevrolet Camaro this weekend at Worldwide Technology Raceway. We're grateful to Corey for stepping in and to the team at Spire Motorsports for making him available. And that's pretty much short, simple, and sweet. And I think the only thing I was going to talk about till we got to this decision this afternoon was Here's the deal. NASCAR had to do something because Denny Hamlin has been on Hendrick Motorsports, it seems like, all season. There's been things about the race at Le Mans, Hendrick and NASCAR in like Flynn with each other. He's made those kind of statements. And, Hendrick got out of a major league little thing that happened here early on in the season. And, they kind of waived everything. They kind of appealed. They looked at it and they said, okay, we're just going to go back to, we're going to go back to the drawing board and let you guys go back out there and have at it again and so forth. And everybody kind of thought at that point, hey, this doesn't look right. Does it appear to be that NASCAR is in Hendrick's back pocket, or is Hendrick in NASCAR's back pocket? Denny Hamlin had pointed that out. And I think more than anything else, NASCAR had to step up. If NASCAR had simply smacked him on the hand and said, we're going to penalize you, I think NASCAR's credibility would have suffered tremendously, I think, after this particular incident between him and Hamlin. And so they had to do something. And I applaud the decision because it separates them. There's still going to be that thought that the two are in like Flynn with each other in the circuit, but still you had to do something. You had to take a stand. And I mean, it was even more so when Denny Hamlin spoke of his own driver, like I told you earlier, talking about Bubba Wallace. And he said Bubba Wallace deserved to be punished. That's a car owner going out on the limb saying, hey, my man deserved it. Punish him the same way that you punish my man for what he ended up doing out on the track here last year. So, I kind of commend NASCAR for making this decision. It was probably one of those scary ones that was going to cause controversy if they'd gone the other way.
It'll be the 7th race that Elliott will miss this season. He, missed the 6th after the broken left leg from the snowboarding accident. And he was replaced by Josh Berry 5 times. Jordan Taylor was a substitute at the Circuit of the Americas. And so Corey LaJoie will be taking his turn in the seat this weekend. There was one other suspension we might as well talk about. Folks might remember from late in the race yesterday when they saw that tire rolling down the track off of Michael McDowell's car. It was, and that's an obvious violation. It was going to lead to suspensions. And Front Row Motorsports number 34 team, the front tire changer, Scott Brzezowski and Jackman Adam Lewis suspended for the next 2 races. So, that's something you don't see happen that often. But that's dangerous to see, to have a tire completely come off the wheel there.
Yeah. And, we saw this similar scenario, if you want to call it that, in the Indianapolis 500. There was a tire that got away from one of the crews there when they were in the pits and so forth, and they managed to get it. And, the Indy Series went ahead and they ruled, they said, okay, we're not going to penalize him on the track. It'll be a monetary punishment out of it. And so the driver got by with it. So that was kind of a lucky thing, but still at the same time, you got to be in control of those tires. You got to find a way to get those tires, have them under control. If that loose tire gets out there on the middle part of the, the drive-through right there as you're coming through on pit road, then it causes damage for somebody else. And it could also be an obstacle out there for something else going on in the race. That's the reason why NASCAR is so particular over this tire thing, getting away from the crews and so forth. So yeah, I kind of expected that, but we got to talk about this. And I think we're going to lead into it. We were going to talk a little bit about the win from last night by Ryan Blaney. Incredible that Team Penske comes up with a sweep this year, 2023 at Indianapolis and at Charlotte.
Yeah, let's talk about Blaney. What a tough weekend for everybody out there. I mean, sitting out there on Sunday, the weather was not going to be conducive to racing, but they did give it a try. And then even yesterday, they finally finished it up late. It was nighttime when they finally finished it up. I know I was flipping back and forth between that and a baseball game and a basketball game. So it was at least maybe 9:00 when they finally got it wrapped up last night. But Blaney winning his first Coca-Cola 600, breaking that long winless streak, big weekend for him.
Yeah, it was a big weekend. And, like you said, that 59 race losing streak. He had not won a race in 59 races. He'd won one Charlotte race, but that was the Roval race. That was the first Roval race that I had a chance to cover when it came to Charlotte. He won that one. It was kind of a fluke thing when he won it because Jimmy Johnson and Martin Truex were going at it with each other. But this was his first 600 win. This was a big win for him. And this was deserving of this team because they have been on the firing line, I think, since the very beginning of the season, from folks wanting to know whether they're going to be able to turn the corner, if they're going to do something with their season. And they did. They actually, this was the race that I think I mentioned before. I think I mentioned it in the news article. You can either go into Charlotte and you either have a bad series of races and Charlotte can turn it around for you, or you have another bad race at Charlotte and it pretty much dictates maybe how the rest of your season's going to go. It changes things dramatically. Now, does this put Ryan Blaney in the catbird seat of winning the championship this year? No, I don't think so. We're still not through the biggest majority of the regular season races. We still have 10 more, I think, something like 10 more to go, something of that nature. So we've got those still left to go. He's in. He doesn't have to worry about it right now, but the thing he has to worry about, he has to finish well. He has to stay ahead of the pack, keep those points going, whether it's through the, each segment of the race and stuff. If he wins one of those segments of the race, gets those points for being, runner up and so forth, that's good for him. But if he has any kind of thing that happens, like it did for Denny Hamlin, like it did for Chase Elliott, then his chances are going to start slipping away, and he could be on that cutoff line like he was last year when he made it in by points. He didn't win a race last year, but he made it in by the skin of his teeth on the points. And then right as he made it in, he started fading away after that. So he has to stay in front. He has to be on top of his game. And that's something last night that he admitted in his interview. I thought the interview with Jamie Little was just incredible to hear a driver come right out and say that. Usually they're pretty cocky when they come out of the car. I mean, we're used to seeing Kyle Busch and some others jump out of the car and they say all this other, thing about, I had a great car and I had this and stuff, and I had a great team. But Ryan Blaney said something that kind of took me by surprise. He said, I was beginning to wonder if we were ever going to win again. And that's something that gets inside the head of a driver. I'm not sure it gets in all of the drivers' heads, but when you're a driver like Ryan Blaney, who is capable of winning races, you've got good equipment underneath you that's, pulling you around the track, and you can last through 400 laps, 600 miles. That's saying something. Now, the thing is, how do you take advantage of it?
What was the situation going on during, again, a long weekend, a lot of time for sitting back and reflecting, or in the case of Bubba Wallace and Aric Almirola, tempers flared a little bit. We don't know exactly, at least I don't know exactly what was going on there. And is there going to be any repercussions for those guys going forward with NASCAR?
I don't know if there'll be any kind of repercussions and stuff. Since this was in a red flag situation, they were out there on, pit road and they were talking, but Aric Almirola approached Bubba Wallace, and it had to do with something over the way that Aric Almirola felt like he was being, I guess, competed against by Bubba in this whole thing, by Bubba Wallace. And he just didn't like the way he was being raced by Bubba Wallace. And at one point, Aric Almirola said, Bubba came by me, he flipped me the bird. And, he said that set me off, and I felt like I needed to go and I needed to have a talk with him. And, they're kind of away from each other. They've got a guy there that's kind of standing guard. Matter of fact, it's the same guy, I think, that broke up the Ross Chastain and the Noah Gragson fight, that Ross Chastain landed a hit to the, what was it? The right side. Yeah. Of Noah Gregson's jaw. But he breaks it up again as Aric Almirola goes and gives Bubba Wallace a shove. And credit one of the fans that was up in the stands at that time with the video camera, because Fox didn't even catch this. Nobody caught this except for a fan. And I hope he got a good payday out of this, one way or another, of capturing that video, or at least gets, over 1 million views, because he was the only one that got that distinct video between Almirola and Bubba Wallace having that disagreement on pit road.
Yeah, on a day where Almirola got caught up in a wreck later, and Bubba ended up coming back from for a while being outside the top 20. His last restart actually had a pretty good car and got finished fourth. His response when he was asked about the conversation, it was a pretty short answer. Yeah, passionate man. So those two guys, I mean, Bubba, that's for Bubba Wallace, that's what, 3 straight top fives, a career best for him. So he's on a little bit of a hot streak right now, and I guess that probably doesn't count his finish in the All-Star race. I imagine so, because that wasn't a points race. So nice little stretch of racing for Bubba. Who else stood out yesterday for you, Rod, in terms of the finishers in the 600?
Well, I guess if I really want to go to the extreme on it, there were a variety of different kind of performances yesterday in the race. And let me go and let me get the finishing status on the race here all together. As I look at it, Kevin Harvick ran really well there for a while. I thought Kevin Harvick was going to run away, and he was actually going to come away with a win. He was going to do so well, and then he gets caught up in a little mishap. Let's just call it that way, out on the track. And then he gets collected, taken out, and then he ends up finishing. Although he finishes 11th, he still finished, pretty, respectable considering and so forth. But he finished on the lead lap. I can't complain about him whatsoever, the way he came out of that. But Alex Bowman, first race back from his fractured vertebra. I think the story we reported here about a week or two ago concerning his comeback with the Charlotte race. He finished a respectable 12th. Kevin Harvick finished 11th, but Bowman felt like he had a better car, a car that could have got him maybe into the top 5, but it just wasn't meant to be. Another good performance by Ryan Preece in that Ford, that number 41 Ford for Stewart-Haas Racing. But then you start seeing some things go the opposite way. Brad Keselowski, he was running well there at first. I think he even led a couple of laps in there, kind of held his own there at the front of the pack. He ended up finishing 19th after a great run. His other driver, Chris Buescher, he finished 8th. So that tells you that that team is rebounding, but it just didn't show up, at least for Brad Keselowski yesterday. And then as I go on down through here, I'm looking at Christopher Bell. He got caught up in a mishap yesterday that put him at finishing at 24th. Of course, Aric Almirola at 25th. Just going on down the line here, Kyle Larson, he ended up having bad luck yesterday, and he ended up finishing 30th. That's not a good win or a good situation for him right now, because he could be left scrambling after, a couple of DNFs this season, this one, and I think there was one or two more that could really put him in a hurt before it's over with. And then, of course, we mentioned Chase Elliott finishing 34th, Noah Gragson 36th. But I guess the big one right here surprised me, finishing dead last in the 84 Chevrolet Camaro, Jimmy Johnson. He was caught up in an accident, and I don't know if he thought that he was going to be able to get back out there on the track and he was just going to run circles around everybody else, pardon the pun. But he was, still at the situation. I think he thought, maybe I have a good chance at this. And you only make it into 37 laps, and then you're done out of this whole thing. I think it happened on lap 30. I think that's where he started at. Let's see here. I'm going to go back and look. He only completed 115 laps. I take that back. So he completed 115 laps, but he was dead last in the race, and not a good look there, because there's 2 of the 3. Well, Erik Jones finished 32nd. So all 3 of the Legacy Motor Club drivers finished at least in the 30 through 37th position. So not a good take for that after, of course, him being lauded as, the next part-time owner, car owner, or whatever you want to call it with Legacy Motor Club. Didn't pan out for him yesterday.
Shows how tough it is. Even the many-time champion, he struggles out there when he's not out there every week, right? So, this week, the Enjoy Illinois 300 at the aforementioned Worldwide Technology Raceway. I don't know a lot about this track in Illinois. It's a 1.25 mile track. Race is Sunday at 3:30 on FS1. What can you tell us about the race?
It's a short track. It's similar to a Charlotte, maybe just a tad bit smaller. Kind of what I refer to as the cookie cutter track, so to speak. But this race last year produced some really great racing between some of the teams, and a lot of people were bragging on the Coke 600 as being such a tremendous race yesterday, exciting all the way down to the very end. I think this race could probably be one as well. They're going into, I call it St. Louis. It's technically right there on the river, and it kind of falls in between with East St. Louis and the way that Illinois kind of comes down with the way Missouri all meets up. And so they kind of consider this to be in St. Louis, or at least home track of St. Louis. But I think what we'll see in this one is a lot of hard charging, hard racing coming up this weekend, especially there at Worldwide Technology Park there in St. Louis. I think you got to look out for some of these guys that have been really good on the short tracks here so far this season. Joey Logano is one guy we didn't mention. Logano was running pretty well yesterday in the race. He ended up getting caught up in one of the melees of the 16 cautions, I think, that they had. Logano likes this track. Logano, this is the kind of track that he's tuned to. He might have a great performance this coming weekend and stuff. And it would be just that much special for Team Penske after, of course, sweeping this past weekend with the Indy 500 and then the Coke 600. It would be just another feather in the cap for Team Penske and the captain, Roger Penske, to get a win the following week after the Coke 600. So a lot of ifs and maybes in there. I'm beginning to wonder too, how will a Corey LaJoie maybe figure into this? He's going to be driving, actually going to be under some good parts, some good equipment. He could end up pulling off his first win, surprising everybody, stepping in for Chase Elliott. Who knows? He's ran really well at Atlanta before, so we'll just have to wait and see how this one could come out. It could be anybody's race for that matter.
Anything else on your mind as we get ready to wrap up the show as far as NASCAR or anything else, Rod?
Nope, nothing right offhand. I think that's pretty much got it. So
well, we got breaking news on this show.
Yeah,
we had breaking
news.
Yeah, that's good. And of course, for those out there, if you want to catch up on Rod's coverage of the Coca-Cola 600, it's on the Augusta Free Press website in the sports section and on the front page right now. So go check that out, and we'll get ready for the weekend. Rod has got us prepared for more on NASCAR news from Augusta Free Press. Just go to AugustaFreePress.com. For Rod Mullins, I'm Chris Cram signing off. Everyone have a great week.